Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and we're going to be talking about writing a planning purpose statement. Now, while there are certainly some large general similarities, I want to be clear for anyone who's working on, say, a capstone project for their master's degree, a doctoral project or doctoral dissertation, that in those specific contexts, a purpose statement has some genre connotations that you will want to be following, and I'd like to refer you to our webinars on those specific degree projects, as opposed to the more bounded planning purpose statement, which is a way to guide what you're doing for something that is more concise and a little bit more open-ended, such as giving remarks at an event. So we're going to be discussing today, using as our catalyst, an assignment from the Intro to Public Speaking course. And this is one that asks you to define some starting parameters so that we know what it is that you're trying to do and to guide some of the decision making about how you might go about doing that. Now, this assignment description begins with a preamble, and just if you are looking at the original instructions for this, I think it's helpful to take a look at what you're seeing here and being able to break down these different elements and understand that, okay, this is more guiding. This is when it starts listing the things that you will be graded on. So it's always helpful to know where you're supposed to focus on. Now, many people will look at the assignment and they'll go down to the rubric here and say, oh, these are the specific requirements, and here's what I need to do for full credit, and then go back and read through these other instructions with that in mind. That is certainly a helpful strategy to go about doing that. I, again, like to start with what is the preamble and say, okay, that makes sense to me. And now let's look at the actual instructions on what to do. And we see it asks you to choose the topic and refine the specific purpose with reference to the course text for the celebratory speech. Now, this isn't a detailed outline because there's another follow-up assignment about that. This is just establishing the basic parameters of what's going on so that your professor has an idea of what you're doing and what kinds of details you might want to be emphasizing through there. And there's this task to pick appropriate context, and these are archetypes, so presentation of award. So you're either, in this case, you're giving an award to someone, or go to the other side, accepting an award. A wedding toast where you are celebrating the couple. You could, if you like, categorize this not as the original wedding, but as a renewal of vows or anniversary celebration, perhaps. A eulogy when you are memorializing someone who has departed. And I will just say as a professional note that before I had finished my 20s, I found that I was in the situation of having to give remarks of all of these nature. And that is something that for many occasions, some happy, some sad, that many of you will probably find yourself as well. So these are very practical elements of public speaking that I personally believe that everyone should be prepared to do because life is likely to put several of these, if not all of them, in your path. And, it's always helpful if you make this more personal. So if, say, you have some friends who are engaged and you're thinking, gosh, I'd like to make a wedding toast and not have it be one of those rambling ones, but people are applauding afterwards and telling me afterwards, I really appreciated it. Why not make it personal and pick that thing? And so we have some details of this specific assignment. And remember, the assignment is not now to outline the whole thing. It is to answer the basic planning questions that will help us determine what kind of thing you'll be doing and what you will and won't be including. So let's say you took the presentation of award. Okay, we're definitely going to want to know that you are introducing someone and probably not telling everything about them because they're going to make their own remarks, but for the benefit of people who may not know or remember all the things about them or talking about the award itself, those are things you might be talking about. Setting and topic, is this a press conference? Is this a big elaborate event? Is it a small greeting? Is it the award ceremony for an athletic event? All of these will affect the details you go into. This exact topic, similarly, what is going on here? And what is your specific purpose here? Now let's delve into this first example here. I'm going to do a eulogy speech for my grandmother who died last year. The pretend setting, or the setting that you are using for this assignment, is speaking at our funeral with friends and family in attendance, which is different from, say, a official state funeral or something like that, where there might be many strangers who are there in a professional capacity. My specific purpose statement, which we might rephrase as the thing that I want to do overall, is to celebrate my grandmother and remind our family and friends of her loving heart. The topic will be a story of her love for me when I was a rebellious teen. Let's break down the relation between specific purpose and topic there. So the specific purpose here is saying, here's what I want to do. I want to celebrate and remind about these aspects of her. And the topic is what you choose to talk about in order to do that. Now, sometimes the topics may surprise you, but as long as it's towards that purpose. And let's think back to that genre of the wedding toast. Often where wedding toasts go astray, especially when alcohol is involved, is people have a general topic in mind without the purpose. And so they start including details that come to mind, but not necessarily are celebrating that purpose. Think of all the embarrassing stories that afterwards people are like, I really wish you hadn't said that, as opposed to something that makes people feel, oh, this couple is so great. They're going to be loving together. Oh, I knew that they were going to be together for these reasons. So let's take a look at the rubric for grading this. So that first column, the criteria, is listing basically the elements. You need to note the type of speech and the specific purpose statement, who your audience is, the type of speech or the subset, inform, persuade, celebrate, and the general topic that you will discuss to do that. And one way to help plan this out for yourself, even though this assignment doesn't require an outline, is to say, okay, what would I do? What would I put in? And as just some general themes, do I feel like I have the fuel or the material to draw on? And where things usually go astray in an assignment like this is not giving enough detail for the professor to know how you're going. Now, let's take a look here at some of the things that might be going on here. So let's say we are doing presentation of award. All right. Well, let's go ahead and add some things in here. What type of speech? Okay. Presentation of award. Great. Let's make that color a little bit stronger. And what will we be doing next? Well, we want to have the setting. All right. For our purposes here, we're going to say this is the Nobel Prize. All right, but which Nobel Prize? It's going to be very different if it's Nobel Prize in literature versus, say, the Nobel Prize in, say, neuroscience. Not to say that they aren't both prestigious awards at all, but that you can have some different expectations about the audience and what language you might use. And so the topic might be, if you're presenting the award, it's probably going to have something about the history of the award. So what if you said, okay, the history of the award, what needs to be done, and some examples of what the awardee did. Now, this is not replacing whatever thanks and acknowledgments the awardee does, but that's saying, hey, we have here an award, and let me introduce it to you so you understand how significant it is. Now, our specific purpose, now that this is going into the what do we want our audience to get away from, to take away from this? Okay, well, let's say our purpose statement is for the want to educate the audience, and awardee. Now, that is a purpose. It's not necessarily the only one. I have been to many conferences and professional society meetings that were very, very dry. And to break it up, they asked some of the speakers to enliven events, to tell jokes, to lightly make fun of things. And so your purpose might not be to do something like that for a presentation of award. It could be to cover the changeover of things, to give time to set things up, to amuse. And this is going to depend a lot on the context. Because if you had as your context that the setting, that this was a dinner awards where people are eating, okay, that's a little bit different if it's we're all sitting formally and we're waiting for this to be done. You can also, as part of your description of this, it might be helpful to give us an idea of the time that you are trying to fill. Because if I'm giving a 30-minute presentation to the award, that's a lot of intro, and it better be interesting in a way that keeps the audience interested. A 30-minute wedding toast is probably way, way, way too much. And, keep in mind the audience there, and that they may have the DJ cut you off. So, we want it to be really good and interesting and probably telling something new and not embarrassing. So let's say we went in another direction and said, okay, we are going to be doing a wedding toast. All right, so let's say it's a wedding toast celebrating your best friend's, plural's, marriage. All right, what's the setting? Is this going to be within, like, at the wedding chapel right before they go off to the next thing, take the photos and stuff? Is it going to be at the celebratory dinner? Is it going to be an informal picnic outside? We could tell us things like that that will shape some of the things. It's going to be okay, saying it's in a restaurant, and who's there? Let's say with an intimate group of friends. Now, this is something that is actually rather important because the intimate group of friends is more likely to know things and you give specific references, where if it's 150 people from the nuclear family and things, an in-joke might cause more confusion and misinterpretation than if you have a group of people where you can reliably say, oh yes, they'll know what that is. Now, what's our purpose here? Now, we could go in some interesting directions here, because if your purpose was embarrass the bride and groom to get revenge, yeah, I'd say please don't do that. That's very unkind. But that would be a very different thing versus lightly rib the bride and groom to So compare these two different things. Embarrass the bride and groom to get revenge, or lightly rip and slightly embarrass them by putting them in the spotlight to tell other people about how loving their relationship is. So there is some overlap there, but that purpose, the specific purpose, is very different. And we can do that with the same thing, the topic of crazy things they did for love. And so that purpose is really key here to how it's going to land and what you end up doing. Let's say crazy things they did, dress up, fly across the country, etc., is very different than saying, oh yeah, and they got drunk and crashed their car or something like that, which would be not doing the purpose, or not really celebrating the best friend's marriage. So, keep in mind how these things are going to be involved. And I'd also like to highlight that we have a very strong correspondence here between the prompt here and identifying what type? Eulogy. Setting? The setting will be the funeral. The topic is going to be the grandmother. Specific purpose? Remind friend and family of her loving heart. And so the topic is grandmother, big picture, and then more specifically, the story of love when being a rebellious teen. And so if you just said topic grandmother, you probably wouldn't get full credit because that's a little bit too general and you'd need a much longer amount of time. But if you're focused on a specific story to tell about your grandmother as a window into understanding who she is, that's a nice manageable amount. Now, a couple more things before we move on here. Again, check against this and make sure that you have looked forward at the next week's guidelines because you will have to write out an outline for this speech later. But I'd also like to bring your attention to some things about citing the source as you go on, because eventually you'll be aligning what you're doing with the guidelines that you have, both these guidelines here about different types of speech, and also perhaps making reference in the next stage to the course text. So here I've searched for Speechcraft Joshua Gunn for the course textbook. And if we open this up, just click on the title here, we have a citation button here. And if you go ahead and select APA, just keep in mind while this is a great time saver, anytime where it's algorithmically generated, we want to be clear on the fact that we have to check and make sure it's actually APA compliant. So in this case, we have the title, Speechcraft, and then there's other information here that's not actually part of the title according to APA style. And so you'd want to delete that part and to delete this space here. The rest of the information is fine, and if you're copying to the clipboard and just deleting that extra information and that space, you will save yourself a lot of time. Just make sure that you remember to check and don't just copy without verifying that that is APA compliant. This is a good rule of thumb as well. As we see people using AI tools for more and more things, it's helpful, but you always have to check the work to make sure that it is something that you are putting your name to, that you want to make sure that it is accurate. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. But again, knowing the specific purpose for your remarks is really helpful in guiding things overall, and all of the genres of speeches for this assignment are ones that you can expect to come up in life. So thanks for joining us. Have a good rest of the day.